the ongoing impact of advertising restrictions.
Okay, thank you. I already introduced the topic, so I just will introduce the panelists today. Next to my left is Avi Rachel Cosgrave, who is General Counsel for Leo Vegas. Next to her left is Justin Franssen, partner at KKF in Amsterdam. Next to his left is Wulf Hambach, partner at Hambach in Munich, Germany. And next to his left is Nina Higginson, partner at Mesanti and Andersen in Copenhagen. Okay, so we have three independent lawyers, Justin, Wulf, and Nina, and we have one in-house lawyer, who is Avi. Let me start with the independent ones, and let me briefly describe, please Justin, go ahead, the situation in your country, the regulation when it's about gambling advertising.
Thank you, Santi. Well, as many of you know, our market opened in 2021. And really quickly, things went south, you could say. From an advertising perspective, one of the first things that probably happened is a ban for the use of role models. This was actually ignited by a massive marketing spend by predominantly, you could say, the incumbent operator or the incumbent license holders such as Holland Casino, NLO, and so forth. This led to political outcry, you could say, a lot of negative media attention and so forth. And currently, so on the 1st of July, we also had the introduction of a ban for untargeted advertising, which means no advertising on radio, television, and print, like in Spain, like in Italy. So there is little marketing options left other than online marketing with very specific restrictions. So that's currently the situation. And
is there any upcoming reform? Anything?
Sorry?
Any upcoming reform? Any light at the end of the tunnel?
No, there is no light at the tunnel. It's actually pitch dark. I'm in the industry for 23 years now, and it's, to be very honest with you, it's the worst of the worst I have seen to date. And there's a whole thing of the whole, it's the political arena. We have, for instance, we have elections in 8 days' time. And there is a new party that stood up. It's called New Social Contract. And they are actually pleading for a complete reversal of the online gambling legislation. Just imagine, so many operators have, spent years and years and years and tons of money to, get a license, and then we have this, this situation where politics, or at least some politicians, want to reverse the legislation. We don't think it's going to make it, by the way, and of course we're never going to be sure. But my expectation, or our expectation in general terms, is that we are going down the path of Italy or Spain. So more restrictions, and I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we'll be faced with a complete ban.
Wulf, you want to explain us how the situation is in Germany?
Yes, Santi. I saw the picture from Madrid in 2008 with a shirt, Bwin, that reminded me of the state of Schleswig-Holstein that first opened the gate towards regulation in Germany. And you saw after, this is not comparable in Schleswig-Holstein, they really went down the road to be a test market, create a test market for Germany. They issued around 60 online gambling licenses. And of course, Schleswig-Holstein having 2.8 million citizens, so going in the direction of the size of a smaller member state, you really saw that with one authority, centralized, you were able to have an ongoing communication. So Guido Schlütz used to be the former regulator. So he was really having an open dialogue with the industry before the licensing, talking about advertising restrictions, how advertising should be received by the customers, he has asked after 1 year after issuing the licenses, an institute of therapy for addiction. How did the market change with quite many advertisings being within the local clubs, but also on TV, where you have SH licensed only. So you were only able to play when you were living in Schleswig-Holstein. So at the end, they said that it stayed on a level, the problematic gambling of 0.6 to 0.8 in that direction. But no more addicted gamblers have been caused by the opening up of the online gambling market. That was the finding of a study. Where are we now? Today, we hoped that the model in Schleswig-Holstein would have paved the way to a proper regulation in Germany. Yes, we opened up the market in 21, as in Holland, issued licenses in 22 and 23, but with a huge catalog of advertising restrictions. We have on the one side a paragraph 5 in the interstate treaty saying that advertising is allowed based on a license. But then you have 25 limitations, 25 on pages in the license itself that cuts down the rights to advertise. So at the end, we also think that down to a level that has constitutional right problems. So this is on paper. In reality, also the market has shrinked due to all these restrictions. So the advertising market went down after being quite high. So at the moment, we are also facing, I don't want to say bans, but at least we have organizations like the federal spokesman for addiction, Mr. Bienert, just said at a conference that I shared on a panel sitting next to me, saying that the only tool that we can really and should use to lower gambling addiction is an advertising ban. So this is where the pressure is coming from. Then you have 100 gambling addiction organizations in Germany being decentralized, organized since decades, and they work together with the federal spokesperson and going and trying to push the direction of not only having 25 limitations, but endless, so to say, so that online gambling advertising for whitelisted companies at the end should be the result. The consequences we talk about later, but that's where we are right now. So didn't happen yet, but at least the political pressure is immense, coming from more the left corner, so social democratic states, and the spokesperson for addiction affairs on federal level is also a social democratic party member.
Thank you, Wulf. Nina, give us some hope. Any hope coming? Can you describe the situation in Denmark? Is it better than?
Yeah. I actually think that the Danish regulation is quite mild these days. However, we are looking into a lot of regulation on the marketing in Denmark. Right now, there are stakeholder meetings where we are facing more regulations. It's about the whistle-to-whistle ban for commercials in connection with live sports events. It's a ban on bonuses. It is a time slot with no gaming regulation, gaming commercials. It is also, of course, a ban about using celebrities. However, it doesn't affect sponsorships. And also there is a lot of focus on social gaming and kids and loot boxes. So I think we will be facing from Denmark a lot of regulation, and they will present a bill in the beginning of 2024 only about regulation in order to get control of the increasing level of commercials, of course, and also an increasing gambling addiction. The figures are a little uncertain because, of course, depends on how you question people, whether they consider themselves having a gambling addiction issue. So, but it is an issue. However, it is also important to know that actually there is quite a lot of dialogue in Denmark between the industry and the ministers, and it is possible to get into dialogue with the regulators. And this is why I would encourage the industry, and there are already, of course, stakeholders. They're having these meetings, but please try and get in contact with the Danish regulators, because you can actually affect it. You can explain the industry for the politicians, and as we saw it in 2012 in connection with the liberalization, they will listen if you are well prepared.
Thank you, Nina. Abby, I wonder how you handle all these situations, all these restrictions on your day-to-day work. What's the impact for an international operator like Leo Vegas? All these kind of advertising restrictions. How do you deal with them? What's the impact for it?
Well, it's certainly not getting any easier for international operators, not only in marketing, but I mean, for us, we have to have amazing external lawyers to keep an eye on the markets that we're in, because there are sometimes fast changes, but it changes a lot of internal planning. Some of these regulations can come in quite quick and without warning. And if you're looking at sponsorships, for example, in order to get the best pricing, they're obviously sometimes quite long in budget planning. I've seen massive changes in internal resource over the years that I've been in gambling. I mean, the days of having even just one compliance manager looking at a market, it's really not the case anymore. You have to resource quite heavily within your compliance departments, and the internal training programs around marketing and the internal guidelines and the internal controls are a lot stricter than they used to be. So it's just another area which has become incredibly complex for an international operator.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe that all these advertising restrictions, at the end of the day, they are appropriate, proportional as a regulatory tool in order to protect your players?
I do not. I think sometimes they come in far too heavy, and what we do increasingly see in the different markets that we're in, and the UK is you're still able to do some stuff, and there's a lot of internal risk assessment on what we can and can't do, and a lot of responsibility still lies with the operator on designing how we do sponsorships or use certain ambassadors in our marketing. But we do see a good channelization in the UK because of that. And what we often see then in many other territories, the moment you take a regulated operator off the air, when you were saying before, when they can't distinguish the difference, if you're not, one of the very things to help players identify who is regulated is where you first meet the player. And that's obviously marketing. So the moment you absolutely prohibit that or massively restrict it, the player is unable to tell who is regulated and who isn't, and will often find themselves on the wrong platform. So I do think they're smashing it up with a sledgehammer, and not for the interest of the regulated industry often.
Nina, do you think that these measures are proportional, that they are okay to protect the player? You think that restrictions on gambling advertising at the end of the day is going to reduce the number of problematic players?
I actually think that the Danish government is acting quite reasonable. It is initiatives you need to make. Then the level of initiatives are, of course, to be discussed. But in order to keep the Danish gambling market well respected, and it really is right now, then you need to have more control of the marketing, especially in connection with sports events and when it is about young people and children, because else you'll have the people's voice against you. So I think they are pretty reasonable, and it seems okay. The industry has tried to self-regulate and make code of conducts, etc. They have met some competition law issues in order to make agreements with the broadcasters, and that is why it's necessary to make some legal initiatives as well. So I think it's okay.
Justin.
Well, it very much depends how you look at it, whether it's proportionate or not. The government obviously will tell you it's proportionate, and the reasoning they may likely use is that they have reached and actually exceeded their channelization objective. So the idea was to channel 80% of the people who were playing, on .com before to the regulated environment. Now they have reached a level of 90%. I think the whole discussion in the Netherlands started very quickly because the gambling authority came out with a report, and I think an estimated 450,000 new players were created out of nothing. You know, they weren't playing in the .com environment, and that was not the objective of the legislation. I don't think there was a clear evidence that gambling addiction was on the rise. It wasn't. It was the mere fact that 60% of the players who and you can contest these figures, but 60% of the players were totally new, and the majority of those were the so-called young adults, so under the age of 24. And from that perspective, you could say it's reasonable to have some restrictions. But of course, as an operator, and especially as a new operator, without any brand recognition, without any, and if you have to break into the market and you can't do any marketing, is of course horrible. What the Minister of Justice recognized in his recent letter to Parliament is that, on the one hand, yes, we are going to look at advertising restrictions as are currently in place in other vice industries, such as tobacco and alcohol. And I expect something from government mid next year on this. But they also recognize at the same time, and you described it very well, Santi, just a moment ago, the situation in Italy is horrible. The legislation there from 2018 led to a black market, which is worth an estimated 25 billion euros. So that's also something the government doesn't want. So is it proportionate? That remains to be seen. I don't know if I can take another position than that.
Okay, noted. Wulf, I want to know your opinion on this, but also, if I'm not mistaken, there is some kind of blocking advertising to the black market by the authorities in Germany. Is this having any kind of positive effect on the market, or is it sinking? Is it going up? What's going on there?
Hopefully you can understand me, because the noise is quite heavy here. The black market. If you ask the regulator and the GGL and the states, they're saying everything is under control. So they're celebrating themselves in a way, saying that we have same figures as in Denmark, between 85 and 93, not 94 or 92, 93%. Very concrete numbers. When I have asked in Zurich at a conference, the CEO of director of the gambling authority, GGL, how did you measure the black market? He was saying, different methods, but we are clicking through offers. Well, I think Denmark has a very good approach in measuring the black market. They found leading experts that know how difficult it is to measure a black market, because it's like in all the sectors, like the labor sector, for instance, you cannot find the people on the street asking, yes, I'm not paying taxes, I don't have a contract. So, but there are different measures how, like H2, for instance, is using how to come close with an estimation to the numbers. And they estimate between 20% of the market is white up to 40. So between 20 and 40 is only white. So these are numbers, first numbers coming from independent resources, not state-driven. So you could see that, and the answer is quite clear. I mean, how does it come? Just concerning advertising, there are many restrictions, but the KYC process in Germany has been designed in such a difficult way for the customer that if you would test a normal intelligent man to register at a licensed website, it would take you a very long time to understand the terms and conditions in the KYC process. how to get the train running that you play on a licensed operator. Whereas you have on the other side a lot of offers, hundreds of offers coming from outside of the European Union in particular, where enforcement is nearly not possible. So if you on the one side ask for a total advertising ban and have 25 plus restrictions on that side, plus an unattractive offer product-wise, but also scale-wise, well then the trend is also not very good. Right? I don't see how the plane is lifting up. So I see indeed a huge problem in Germany. So the first reports, iGaming Business did a short report on it. We had it at the conference, discussed that matter. And I want to cite somebody sitting on my panel saying, well, the president of the Black Market Union of operators, gambling operators, would cheer with the framework, legal framework we are having, and the lack of enforcement on the other side. So long story short, I think the black market is a huge problem in Germany right now, and advertising is the tool for the whitelisted operators with a license to differ from the black market operators that cannot be enforced, right? So we have ISP blocking, for instance, as part of the major enforcement tool. It failed at court already.
Well, at the end of the day, restrictions on advertising are usually adopted under the flag of responsible gambling. I want to ask you, Abby, at the time of controlling, tracking the players, what do? You reduce the number of ads that you do on TV, newspapers, etc., or what tools an operator, international operator like Leo Vegas, uses at the time of tracking players? How do you interact and communicate with the players when they have a
It's definitely something where we're having to innovate now constantly. Obviously, the easiest way of doing it is hard threshold on players, but it doesn't make for a nice UX with players, and it often leads to players being closed down without warning while you do RG checks. So we've definitely lent more into technology. I've been with Leo Vegas for 18 months now, and there's been new RG builds. We have the algorithms. Everyone has algorithms. It's then how we interact with the player at the right time and with the right messaging. There's different markers of harm, and actually capturing the correct marker is often more important than just stopping the player. So, if it's fast-paced, small deposits, or it's long time on site, there's different things. But it's increasing and it's different, and each regulator expects to see things slightly differently. And often you're following enforcements rather than the regulation to understand what it is they're looking at, because the regulation isn't clear enough. So it's a bit of a moving target. And it's definitely something that's constantly on my table for improvement.
Thank you. Justin and Wulf, I would like to hear your opinion on this trend with all these restrictions. You are all at the end of the day saying the same thing, that markets are going down thanks to all these restrictions, not only in gaming advertising, also, as I said, in the name of responsible gambling, introducing new requirements. Nobody's against responsible gambling, just about introducing all kind of measures that make the game unattractive at the end of the day for the player and takes him or her to the black market. I want to know, I want to take your crystal ball and please tell me, do you think that at some point regulators, politicians, etc., are they going to rectify, or do you think that this is the beginning of the end? This is the trend to the lowest point possible.
Right. Santi, I've tried to look in crystal balls for many years. I've been around in this industry, and I always was wrong. So don't ask me to look into crystal balls, please. No, but we're not at that stage yet in the Netherlands because, other markets are in way more advanced stages, like Spain or Italy the Netherlands, there's not much to rectify yet. We are going to implement things, more restrictions. And I honestly don't know what would happen. I think political change would only happen once they see that the channelization rates would dramatically drop. And At which point, I don't know what measure they will take. Will they then relax advertising restrictions? Will the offering be relaxed? I mean, it's very difficult to say. They will look at that moment at what tool or what mechanism is the most effective to get the channelization back in order. But for the moment, I mean, I'm just purely looking at the situation in the Netherlands. We're far from that yet. Correcting. They are now implementing, and the correcting phase will be later. Corrections will happen, and additional corrections may happen. We have the review of the online gaming legislation rather next year. This was in the law. It was built into the legislation. So after a certain period of time after the market opening, a review of the Gaming Act will take place for online gaming. And there we'll see, there may be some rectification going on there, but that process is yet to start. So maybe better move to Wulf.
Who knows? Wulf.
A very difficult one to look ahead, but I think on the short term, we will see that the new authority in Germany, as other gambling authorities in other jurisdictions where you just had issued licenses, are concentrating on those operators who they can grab to send out fines, for instance, for illegal advertising, for breaking the conditions I just mentioned in the license conditions, trying really to put more weight on the whitelisted operators. But the hope, and the hope I have, and this is based on the fact that the German media landscape is quite strong and independent. Media companies, but also sports associations on professional level, they have gathered and said, this is a direction that we don't understand. So the more we find committees that are interdisciplinary, where not only politicians sit on the table, but also representatives from sports, from the media, and from gambling. When we have like committees like Game Care or Gamble Aware, where again, you have the experts, interdisciplinary sitting together and exchanging information about what is a responsible offer, what is responsible advertising, based on a feasible offer with a KYC process that is proportionate, easy to use, with advertising, not with a ban, but allow advertising, but based on a responsibility basis. So I think with the German media being very powerful in Germany and independent, like RTL, like Axel Springer Group, I think there will be a shift but there, it's exactly what you said, Santi. I think we need lobbying activities that are straightforward and truthful, and not trying to break with extra power the wall, going in a direction which is not politically speaking supportive of it.
Nina, Denmark, the Danish model has been considered like one of the best, if not the best one, probably in Europe. What lessons can the rest of the jurisdiction take in terms of gambling advertising regulation from Denmark?
I think the Danish regulators have done it well in order that they listen. They actually listen. It's also the licensee's opinion that they can go and talk to the regulators. I mentioned this earlier on. Right now, I also think that you have a balanced dialogue, but it's really important that you learn that you need to bring objective information to the politicians in a very easy to understand way, and not to overdo things, because I guess most people do not like a lot of gambling acts just before a live event. And right now there are a lot of gambling advertising just before live events, and it will be regulated, and I think it will be balanced. And this was also why there was about to be made a code of conduct about this issue. So I think the operators, they actually adapted this issue to them. But in terms of what the world can learn, it will be try to have a dialogue with the industry. And the industry, please provide objective information in a balanced way to the politicians.
Thank you. We love to blame our regulators, our legislators about any kind of restrictions on advertising. They don't do well, but as Wulf just pointed out, perhaps the industry has not done his job well either. Abby, what's your take on this? Do you think that the industry has done an appropriate work to reach where we are here, and is only in the side of the regulator's fault, or is our fault too?
No, I do agree that sometimes we're our own worst enemy from an operator perspective. If there is a new market open and that there's a race to get the customers in, that's sometimes the priority rather than joining together and acting in a responsible way. So I do agree. The industry does work together in many ways, particularly in my area. So on the legal and compliance side, we tend to lean into other operators quite a lot. Sometimes less so on the marketing side. I think internally when you see operators, quite often how certain departments are rewarded on bonuses, etc. It doesn't always take into account sustainability measures. So as a marketing director for a certain territory, you're often not left with the compliance burn that you may leave with that territory for the decisions you make. And I do think as an industry, we could internally regulate that a lot better. Yes.
Justin.
Now, Santiago, as you probably know, I'm quite pessimistic if it comes to trying to unite the industry and effectively lobby. I mean, time and again, the industry has demonstrated not to learn from mistakes made in other jurisdictions. And prior to the market opening, we were really pushing for it. Come on, guys, do us a favor, work together and so forth. And lo and behold, it didn't work. And what is... I mean, I really don't know what it is, but ultimately what it boils down to, in my view at least, is that individual interests simply seem to prevail over like a common goal. We want to offer the government to introduce this particular self-restriction, and then immediately, the calculators come out. Is this going to affect me, and this is not going to benefit my competing operator? But if you think like that, then it's an accident waiting to happen. Then yes, at some point, the government will come and slap you with an advertising ban, tobacco or alcohol style. So what needs to happen, and it will not, I can assure you, what needs to happen is essentially an offer the industry has to make proactively to the government to say, this is what we're going to do, and would come with serious restrictions, because you're not doing that, you're losing control. And I think we already lost control in the Netherlands to a certain extent. So I'm sorry, no happy story for you.
Nina, what's your take on this?
I think you will see a big change in Denmark when we have this new regulation implemented. So much more restricted, but hopefully still a nice and balanced market.
Cool.
I thought I can think longer about the question. Very, very short answer.
That was Danny's effectivity.
No, and wise, yes. So this is in particular in Germany a problem, used to be a problem in Denmark. And in this connection, I would like to relate to a comment from a prime minister telling me, look, the gambling industry in Germany is lobbying in such a bad way because they're splitting the industry, has sectors, and all sectors are speaking with different tongues. So when you are a politician and a decision maker, he said you're cheering, because then you don't have to do anything. If you're approached by lobbyists, from different gambling sectors, and they're speaking with a different tongue. There's nothing you have to change, because, well, they fight each other, and so you can do your own game. And this is what is happening in Germany. So you have different interests coming from the slot machine, the amusement arcade industry. Of course, still, if you look at the big players, 80+% is coming from not online. So they have a keen interest to push their market with their tongue, whereas online has different, it's different arguments, right? I know that in Denmark we had the Amusement Arcade Industry Association taking the tax for online 20% gross profit to competition, DG competition, European Commission, to change the law because it was too mild coming from the direction of the amusement arcade industry. And now this is what is happening in Germany, and we have really different tongues, and this is not good, not at all. We have the Association of the Amusement Arcade Industry. We have the Association of the Sports Betting Industry. We have the Association of Online Casino Industry.
Just for online.
All separate. This is not going to be effective at all. Mm-hmm. So one tongue, and I think if I look in Abby's direction, if you see that MGM took over Las Vegas, this is one tongue. And I think we could learn from these big players how they approach not only the market, but lobbying, offering in all sectors, right?
What's your recommendations to both regulators and the industry in order to move forward? And let's try to give some kind of positive message to our audience today that had made it to arrive to this difficult to reach conference room. Abby.
I think from my side, and it has improved. You mentioned MGM purchasing us, and we do find that as a result of that, regulators are a little bit more willing to speak with us. But I think to regulators, to be able to sit down with them and to be able to explain internal controls and plans and how we work internally. And at least from my perspective, the company that I work for, we're not interested in at-risk players. We're not interested in abusing young players. We are very interested in sustainability, but also fighting against a very uncompetitive environment. When you try and take that stance and you try and be the big player and try and put more controls in, and then you've got people doing competitor analysis and telling you what other people are doing constantly internally. So it's quite a hard environment. In regards to other operators, we do need to lean in a bit more, I think, commercially. We're also so concerned at times with sharing what we're doing and what our trade secret might be, which is normally exactly the same thing when you look at what the marketing people are doing anyway. But it would be nice to see the commercial elements. We do work well together, legal and compliance-wise, but the commercial elements of the business leaning in and owning this, because at the end of the day, it's at least in my view, it's less marketing people required going forwards if we stop marketing. So it's in their interest to do it.
Justin.
So you were asking about
recommendations
to
regulators and to the industry.
Yeah, to the industry already.
In order to get a better,
already told you that is hopeless. To regulators, I would say, and my regulator in particular, of course, I can't speak for other regulators, but I'm really jealous of Nina, who at least when I was looking at the Danish system, had an excellent regulator. And you could talk to them. If you had an issue, you can simply pick up the phone. And maybe I'm over romanticizing this, but in any event, they appear to be very approachable. I'm not sure whether that's still the case today, but it's completely different from our perspective. And I'm hoping that our regulator learns a little bit from the Danes. We try to sort of imprint it into their brain when they were set up in was it 2012, 2013, but they haven't sort of replicated that model. I really wish that the sort of Danish approach from a regulatory perspective, would be more embraced, if you will.
What about the industry? You said the regulators, but what about the industry? What would you recommend them?
I don't know what to recommend. I mean, ultimately, it's trying to unite. Yes, and we have the same things as in Germany, where there's conflicting interests and people are not speaking with one voice in The Hague. But ultimately, I think don't wait for the government to act, but come to realize that you have to sometimes do things you don't like, but rather do it jointly and proactively, because otherwise, the snake will bite you. The snake being the government. They will decide for you if you do not come up with proper self-restrictions and all kind. Not just in advertising, but also in your product offering and that kind of stuff. If you do not do it, the government will do it for you, and what they will come up with is always going to be worse.
Wulf.
Yes, I think that after listening to all the comments, you see that there is a huge gap between the governments and the industry. Lost translation in many things, and I think it also has to do with what Dina said, that sometimes when you enter discussions, it's overcomplicating. So those politicians and the governments that make decisions are often not the big experts. So it's better to say no than to work yourself into issues. So learning effect would be, from my point of view, that use those structures that are already there, in sense of International Association of Gaming Advisors, the IAGR, working together with GREF, working together with International Association of Gaming Regulators. So bring regulators and the industry together in such a format, but with also not only many sectors, speaking with many tongues, but bring in those operators and try to build a committee to simplify things, how we take the industry, I mean offline and online, both together the next 5 to 10 years when it comes to customer protection. And don't forget the European role in this regard. I mean, the picture you have drawn, it's all based on European court decisions. Of course, we lost faith in the European bodies to help in this regard, but we also do have a minimum standard recommendation coming from the European Council about online gambling, saying that you need at least a minimum standard when it comes to customer protection. So these are the ways that we have to reactivate.
Nina, Justin was wondering if the Danish regulator is still approachable. Is he? And what's your recommendation to him and to the industry?
You can still talk and have a dialogue with the Danish regulators. And what you need to do is, of course, also to put yourself in the position of the politicians who are going to be elected. And they need to follow, in some extent, the people's voice. And then the regulators, they want to serve the politicians. So that's what you have to be very much aware of. And like right now, you will also have to be very much aware of that actually the Danish media are suffering, and the very popular Danish TV2 station in Denmark, they have a lot of their income from gambling ads, and they are owned by the Danish state, and there's a public service station. And you have to be aware when you're talking to the politicians that gambling ads are actually also a part of the financing of the Danish public service system. So it's not like the politicians will just delete all gambling action. Maybe they will, but they can't because they are relying on the income. So if you balance your dialogue with the operators and try to tailor-made it so it makes the politicians pleased as well, it's a good balance. So try to read the media and political picture and try to talk along that and then get the best out of it. Because as Justin said, you risk to get a no if you are just pushing it too far.
Before we thank our panelists today, I'd like to say that I think we all agree that gaming advertising should be, of course, regulated, but not without any kind of analysis, which is the current trend. I mentioned at the beginning of the panel the case of Colombia, which adopted restrictions, not even in the form of a decree or an act. It was a decision adopted by the regulator, and which seems to be oriented by some companies in the market already. Nobody's against asset regulation. What we believe, our experts here, I think, have transmitted to you today, is that regulation should come with the hand of both the interest of the regulator, the interests of the industry too, which are not so far away from one to the other. And at the end of the day, the main beneficiary are the players, which are the ones who need to be protected, and no one is against that. With that, thank you very much to all of you for attending to this panel, and of course, help me to thank our panelists today.